Howdy y'all, my name is Dave, this is the Anime Field Guide podcast, and you are listening to The Studio Rundown. This is my series where I take you through the history and business practices of anime production houses across Japan. Today's episode features another pushpin planning company, or A3P. And a quick special thank you to Dark Cat for the theme music. This is Lover's Oasis. You can find him on Spotify and all major music platforms. Thank you to Upbeat for making it free for creators. A3P, for much of its existence, was a smaller support studio, mostly handled in-between, second key animation, has just a lot of assistance works across various films, OVAs, television series, individual episodes, that kind of things, but produced a few key projects that had a remarkable impact on both sides of the Japanese animation industry, particularly in the 80s and the 90s. Now, both sides, I mean the safe for broadcast and the not so safe for broadcast. A lot of 18-plus projects came out of this studio. My primary focus for this episode will, of course, be on the safe for broadcast side of A3P's production, but there are a couple of hentai/erotica series that will be mentioned. So, hi Mom. Another pushpin planning company was founded by Kazufumi Nomura on June 22nd, 1984. The studio was based out of Suginami, Tokyo. Nomura-san began working in the anime industry in the mid-1970s. He was a production assistant at Mushi Productions, then moved to Office Academy Studio where he worked on Space Battleship Yamato, aka Star Blazers. He was a production manager for Yamato the movie in 1977 and Yamato 3, the television series, from 1980. He was also on episode direction for 1975's Yosha Raiden, or Brave Raiden, over at Tohoku Shinsa, 1977's Taibokan Yatterman, up through 1981's Yatodeda Man. Both of those are at Tatsunoko. Beast King Go Lion in 1981 at Toei. This came over here as Voltron. With Studio 88, he was a producer on the OVA series Angel Cop and Violence Jack. He also was a producer on Vampire Princess Miyu with Studio AIC, and also worked closely with AIC. A3P worked with AIC. They enjoyed a close working relationship and did a lot of co-productions together. In the mid-1980s, Nomura-san joined the Pacific Animation Company, which some of you might be familiar with if you listen back to our Studio Ghibli episode. PAC handled the majority of animation work for Rankin Bass Productions. Nomura, in particular, worked on 1985's Thundercats, so we have a man who's worked on Star Blazers, Voltron, and Thundercats. So as I mentioned, A3P had a close working relationship with Studio AIC, providing in-betweens and some finishing work for Tenchi Muyo OVAs, as well as El Hazard in the early 90s. But it's better known for co-producing various works with Studio AIC, particularly some various hentai OVAs through the 80s and into the 2000s. There's quite a few, and I'm just going to mention three that stood out to me. These are Rants, Dragon Pink, and then Frantic, Frustrated, and Female. But the big one is, of course, Cream Lemon, one of the most influential and long-running hentai OVA series across the 80s, with various sequels and spin-offs through the 90s and 2000s. Now, the main series of Cream Lemon takes place over a couple of years in the 1980s. It has 38 episodes in total and covers a wide range of genres, all the way from soap opera to sci-fi parody, as well as your expected range of fetishes. Of course, this is a porno anthology. But Cream Lemon was a feature outside of the erotic space. High-quality animation, some experimental deals, a lot of parody works, as I mentioned. Cream Lemon is more like considered a foundational work of hentai, plus the kind of work that influenced anime well beyond the surface-level erotic appeal. And very closely related to the Cream Lemon OVA project is A3P's first outing into the film space with Project Eiko in June of 1986. That was the theatrical release in Japan. Project Eiko began development as episode 3 of Cream Lemon, but the staff was having so much fun with the concept that they basically decided the project had the opportunity to become its own standalone film. The idea with Project Eiko was simply, let's make something fun. At the time, there were a lot of animators from Urusei Yatsura and Studio Pierrot specifically who moved to this project. It was around the time that Mamoru Oshii had his departure from Studio Pierrot. Yuji Moriyama, the animation director on Eiko, had just finished his work on Macross. Some staff also included Shuichi Mashimo and Koji Ito, mechanical design. So these are guys who worked on Macross, Megazone 2-3, and Orgus. They would later work on Irresponsible Captain Tyler, and just a whole bunch of other people. This is a perfect storm of circumstances that brought together some of the best animators in the industry at a time when everyone just wanted to blow off some steam. Project Eiko is a animation project that is like the ultimate animator's anime. It's also stuffed to the gills with all kinds of nerd references, one-off gags, and blatant copyright dodge. Characters and plot of Project Eiko are very complicated. It's a very complex story. We have 3 high school girls, Eiko, Biko, and Shiko. Eiko is a fiery redhead and she has super strength. Shiko is blonde, she's her best friend, who may or not be an alien princess. And Biko is a Lex Luthor type spoiled rich girl who is in love with Shiko and hates Eiko. And so, in typical Lex Luthor fashion, Biko builds some giant robots to try and beat up Eiko. But again, the girl has super strength, so all these robots repeatedly get trashed. So Biko then dons a battle bikini that lets her match Eiko's strength, and the two go on a rampage that destroys both their high school and a good chunk of the city, all the while an alien invasion comes in out of nowhere and destroys much more of the city in a rescue attempt to recover their lost princess, Shiko. Simply put, this is a movie about teenage girls blowing up shit in an over-the-top fashion with a love triangle at its center and a bunch of animators who just wanted to draw cool things. Project Eiko was released in Japanese theaters, like I said, in June 1986, alongside a short film double billing. This was Going on a Journey, Ami Final Chapter. This short film was a conclusion to main character Ami's storyline from the original Cream Lemon OVA series, but this one didn't have any erotic content. This double feature was released by the Pony Canyon Company in Japan on Laserdisc and VHS. The film's soundtrack had also been produced, Eiko's soundtrack had been produced by Joey Carboni and Richie Zito over here in the United States in San Francisco. These guys were well known in Japan and had worked with numerous J-pop artists over the years and continued to after this. Project Eiko got 3 direct sequels. It is plot of the Daitokuji Financial Group in 1987, Cinderella Rhapsody in 1988, and Project Eiko 4, The Final, in 1989. These were basically building on the storyline, air quotes, set in the first movie, and these were successful films, but they are very much sufferers from sequelitis. You know, some major gags and set pieces from the first movie become more continuing jokes. And as far as all the Eiko projects, these were directed by Katsuhiro Nishijima. So aside from Eiko, he's mostly known for directing Agent Aika, which is very Eiko-inspired, Labyrinth of Flames, and Najika Blitz Tactics. Project Eiko was officially released by Central Park Media, and in fact, it was the first title released by the company. This was based in New York, and it was run by John O'Donnell. Project Eiko was released alongside Dominion Tank Police and MD Geis. Eiko and Dominion Tank Police were later shown on the Sci-Fi Channel and had some pretty heavy rerun presence and were very influential to growing anime fandom in the States. CPM later released an Ultimate Collector's Edition in 2002. This was a DVD release containing a bevy of extra features, production notes, some interviews, including the film's soundtrack, and it remained a bestseller for Central Park Media until the company's closure in 2009. After that, Discotek Media rescued the Project Eiko license. In 2010, they put out a new remaster DVD for the film in 2011 of the whole series. This remaster was based on the Laserdisc release. And then many years later, about a decade later, we have Project Eiko The Perfect Edition. These were the original film materials were found. It's a really cool story about it. The search for the original film materials for Eiko. And so the Perfect Edition came out in December 21st, 2021, and also included almost all the special features from the Central Park Media's Collector's Edition, plus several new features. Mike Toole just poured his heart and soul into that. And this is what Discotek called like a kitchen sink release. There is so much in this deal. It's if you're going to collect anything, I would say get your hands on the Project Eiko Perfect Edition. And yeah, Project Eiko is going to be a story for another time. We are absolutely covering this on the Anime Field Guide. Now, alongside Eiko, the next major feather in A3P's cap is, of course, 1987's Robot Carnival. This is a 9-episode anthology series released all in one as a single film. Each segment deals with humans interacting with robots. That's the theme of Robot Carnival. And each segment has its own distinct animation styles and plots ranging from the comedic to dramatic. Each segment was also obviously very standalone, but each segment was largely directed by first-time directors or like animators making their directorial debut. One of the notable ones, of course, being Katsuhiro Otomo, who directed the opening and ending plus epilogue sequence. He was already known over here for Akira, but Katsuhiro Otomo became known later as like a promoter of anthology works. He would work and produce Mani Mani Neo Tokyo, Memories, and Short Piece. Takashi Nakamura, he's a key animator from Yatterman, Star Blazers, and Gold Lightan, but he also directed a film in 2001, A Tree of Palm, which was selected for the Berlin Film Festival in 2002. We have legendary key animator Manabu Ohashi, who's been around since the days of Speed Racer, Cyborg 009, Aim for the Ace, Space Adventure Cobra, the list goes on. So his segment for Robot Carnival is actually one of his few director outings. We have Koji Morimoto, one of the founders of Studio 4 Degrees C, who would later direct the Magnetic Rose segment that would open the Memories anthology film. Yasuomi Uematsu, who's director of action movies Kite, Mezzo Forte, he's got an upcoming film Virgin Punk. Hiroyuki Kitazume and Hidetoshi Omori, who have a lot of work on Mobile Suit Zeta Gundam, Double Zeta, and Mobile Suit Gundam Char's Counterattack. In the United States, Robot Carnival got licensed by Streamline Pictures for a January 1991 theatrical release in Portland, Oregon, with a home video release later that December. This is another big deal for the US fan base. Varied animation styles and stories exposed fans to a wide array of creatives to follow, these people that I just mentioned above. And again, by this time in 1991, Katsuhiro Otomo was white hot in the US. Akira was just one of the most popular things. It was like the face of anime at the time. And so Robot Carnival was, of course, an easy sell. Some co-productions and assistants through the 90s. I picked out a couple. So we have Key the Metal Idol, which was a co-pro with Pierrot. We have Macross 2 the movie, Lovers Again, and Bubblegum Crisis Tokyo 2040. Both of those are with Studio AIC. And in 1991, A3P produced Rojin Z, which is a theatrical sci-fi comedy film directed by Hiroyuki Kitakubo, again a Robot Carnival. And this was also another film created and written by Katsuhiro Otomo and Hisashi Eguchi. Eguchi primarily worked on character designs, and this is one of Otomo's outings on mecha designs. And the general premise of Rojin Z is there's supposedly this government project to develop the ultimate robot hospital bed for elderly patient care. However, the bed is actually a secret government weapons project. The bed escapes with its first patient, like an 85-year-old man, and just proceeds to go on a rampage through town, incorporating all kinds of cars, tech, stoplights, you name it along the way, eventually gaining self-awareness and getting into heated arguments with the old man who's just along for the ride throughout the film. Another big one, a quintessential 90s anime, Golden Boy. This is a 6-episode OVA series that ran from 1995 through 1996, again directed by Kitakubo-san and based on the adult manga by Tatsuya Egawa. And this is another big deal over here when it was released by AD Vision. It's also currently available on streaming on Crunchyroll and others for now, since both the ADV and Discotek releases have been out of print for a while. Ostensibly, Golden Boy is about studying. We follow this genius drifter named Kintaro, who travels Japan on his bicycle, and he takes every episode is standalone, and every episode is a new odd job. Kintaro inevitably proves his mastery of said task, whether it's computer programming or suddenly becoming an Olympic caliber swimmer, or out outpedaling a motorcycle, complete with driving that sucker along a power line and jumping a canyon cap. Golden Boy is another just true animation showcase from A3P, as well as all the racy scenes that border on, I can't believe this isn't a hentai. But getting back on topic here, I got a couple of TV series by A3P to close out the 90s. We have 1998 Kuragani's Communication, which is a 24-episode series based on another manga by Hideo Kato and Tomamasa Takuma. This follows a little girl named Haruka who wakes from a cold sleep years after a global nuclear war, and she has various robot friends to assist her in her new life. However, she discovers that humanity actually escaped to Mars, and so at the end she retrofits a space warship to reach Mars and her fellow humans. 1999, we have Legend of Black Heaven, a 13-episode hard rock TV series. This is another AIC co-production. And this follows middle-aged members of a short-lived heavy metal band, also named Black Heaven. These guys get swept up into being the saviors of humanity in an alien interstellar war, so like a tagline of hard rock to save the galaxy. And finally, we have 2000, Turn of the Century with Sci-Fi Harry. This is a 20-episode psychic thriller animated for the TV Asahi Corporation and the Nagoya Broadcasting Network. This show is based on a novel by Joji Ida, who also wrote Nighthead. And the general premise is Harry is a kid with psychic powers, but every time he uses these powers, someone near him dies. I guess it's like as a cost for the abilities. Sci-Fi Harry was slated for a US release, but never came out. More on that in a minute. The other two series were distributed here, but the VHS and DVD runs are long out of print, like going on 2 decades at this point. Last but not least, we have another big series for A3P, but it's more of a mixture of success and failure that would define the company's legacy going into the 2000s. So going back to the beginning of the 90s, I'm of course talking about JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. Specifically from 1993 to 94, the 6-episode OVA series adapting the Stardust Crusaders arc, or like part 3 of JoJo's. Based on the manga by Hirohiko Araki, which of course JoJo's is well known today, but back then, not so much. It was well known in Japan, obviously, but not so much in the US. A3P also produced a second OVA series, this time a prequel series from 2000 to 2002, ran for 7 episodes, and then the whole set was released on VHS and DVD in Japan, followed by a 2007 theatrical film, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Phantom Blood, adapting the first arc on the manga. And if you're a JoJo's fan, if you're a classic JoJo's fan, I hope I didn't inflict too much psychic damage with that statement. But we're not quite there yet. Following the success of the first OVA series, the 1993 series, A3P formed a company called Super Techno Arts in 1996 in order to release JoJo's directly to the United States. The office was based out of San Francisco. And this was large in part thanks to their stellar reputation in the US from Eiko and Robot Carnival and all the other shows I mentioned earlier. Nomura-san saw this as an opportunity to sell directly to the American consumer without going through the usual licensing routes. And as far as the name Super Techno Arts, this comes from stand in JoJo. So a stand is basically like a psychic ability, or like a psychic guardian that characters in JoJo's use to fight, and stands get like really ridiculous. If you're any part of like a fan of the Persona series, where you summon a persona to do elemental damage or what have you, basically that. They got as far as Super Techno Arts, and then they couldn't really find any good words for the N and the D, so they just kept Super Techno Arts. So as far as JoJo's in the United States, the first North American release was in 2003. This was across 6 DVD volumes, and it released across the 2 years, so 2003 to 2005. They collected both OVA series into a 13-episode full set. They dubbed it in English and released it in story chronological order. So it was JoJo's 2000 came out first, and then 90s OVA finished the set. However, US audiences weren't really sure what to make of JoJo's. Again, the series was popular in Japan, but at the time, it had struggled to make inroads into the United States. A lot of it was fan translations and very bad fan translations. So there wasn't a built-in audience for JoJo. So just A3P didn't quite read the room. And this didn't help with the Super Techno Arts. The distribution had several delays, and they just consistently struggled with marketing. They quickly realized that we're not really sure how to really sell this to the US. Coupled this with the 2007 film Phantom Blood, was never released to home video in Japan or anywhere else. It only had the limited theater run, and that was it. It's basically considered lost media. This film bombed. It had really rough animation. Also, I hear it had like some really drastic plot changes. But nowadays, JoJo's is of course in a much better place thanks to the adaptations by David Productions, as well as properly translated and published manga. But at the time, this is what we had for JoJo's. And at this time, as we go into late 2007, going into 2008, the hits just kept coming for A3P. In 2008, Super Techno Arts announced that suddenly all JoJo's was suspended indefinitely. Now, there was a major controversy because there was the imagery depicting the Quran, which is a big no-no. This was a huge stink-up and just a major controversy. So the solution would basically be a complete recall, and at the end, A3P decided to pull all distribution entirely. And so the business fallout from Phantom Blood, coupled with the controversy of the main series, led to distribution deals on other projects falling through, such as the scheduled release of Sci-Fi Harry, like I mentioned, and then there is also going to be one of the erotic OVAs, Shadow. Thus, Super Techno Arts only ever released JoJo's Bizarre Adventure to the North Americas for a period of maybe 5 years. I have 2 more projects to fill out the 2000s. We have also in 2007, A3P animated Street Fighter Alpha Generations. This is a movie primarily made for the overseas markets and actually wasn't released in Japan officially until 2009's infamous live-action movie, Street Fighter: The Legend of Chun-Li. And even then, it was like a bonus feature for the Japanese version specifically. And in 2008, A3P animated a segment for Fist of the North Star, The Legends of the True Saviors. This was a 5-part film/OVA series produced by TMS Entertainment. This spans 3 theatrical films and 2 OVAs, each focusing on a different character from the manga, as well as reimagining or updating some scenes from that manga. These were released in Japan during a 3-year span between 2006 through 2008, culminating with the 25th anniversary of the original manga. And A3P animated Part 4, The Legend of Toki, so this was released in March 6 of 2008. And from 2008 until its closure, there's not really much more to say. The studio would not be the lead producer on any more works after 2008. The staff also heavily contracted around this time, but you can still see a steady-ish pipeline of works. The animation assistance credits on individual episodes across just a wide range of shows. Again, this went full support staff, and in June 10th of 2021, studio founder and president Kazufumi Nomura, he passed away at the age of 73. And after that, no one else stepped up to take his place, so eventually the studio closed its doors and was liquidated on July 31st. When I look at this, I see the story of a studio that burned red hot for a good amount of time, yet the key projects that really defined them in the 80s and the 90s are just still remain as cultural touch points for the anime industry and worldwide fandom. You know, Project A-ko alone is a generational work, one that has not been replicated since, at least in my opinion. And so I really wanted to highlight A3P and give this one out to the OGs, some of the OG fans from the 80s and the 90s, these guys who laid the foundation of anime fandom we enjoy today because of their enjoyment in part of the works that this studio produced. But what do y'all think? Do you have any other favorite shows from this studio? Are there any other studios like A3P that you think had a big hit or maybe a couple big hits but then fell off the mainstream radar? Do you think I should cover more studios like that? Let me know down in the comments. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and until next time, stay safe and watch more cartoons.